Anchor Ben Swann giving you a reality check. Ben, welcome back to the program.
Brian, thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure, man. You have such some great things, these little things you do called reality check, keeping us up to speed on what I will characterize oftentimes as shenanigans. Craziness going on in Missouri over the weekend with people being arrested at the delegate selection meeting. What do you got on that one, Ben?
Yeah, it's really interesting. As you and I have talked about this for the last couple of weeks, two things have kind of emerged. One is that we'll call shenanigans when we see them, but there's a fine line between shenanigans and fraud, and whether or not because obviously there's a legal standard for fraud.
Yeah, that's
so
just a declaration of shenanigans, which often leads to a legal charge of fraud. So go ahead.
That's right. But the other issue is, and I've been talking about this ever since you and I have started talking, which is the issue of delegates. That the real issue in this race is not about winning beauty contests from state to state. It's about winning delegates. And so as I've tried to explain this to people, and we've done a number of pieces explaining how the delegate process works and actually educating a lot of people on this, now we're seeing the results of that, which is a lot of people don't realize how this works, but when a state like Missouri holds its beauty contest last month, then in the month of March, when it's all over with, all the folks who were named delegates show up to vote on who's going to move on to the state convention as delegates. And at the state convention, they vote on who's going to move on to the national convention. So what's been happening over the last few days has been the process of voting on those state delegates.
It's kind of like a weeding out process of sorts, a voting up or upvoting certain people to go on to the big deal, right?
Absolutely. And it's not based upon who won or who lost in the beauty contest part, because those are just straw polls.
Right.
They don't actually mean anything. And so there are a lot of people who are under the assumption, well, if Rick Santorum wins in Missouri, he's therefore going to take all these delegates from Missouri. That's not necessarily the case. So what we've seen is in Missouri, and one reason I've really stayed away from how, some of these states where there's been a lot of accusations is because you really need evidence of things that are going on. Missouri, the folks who were there brought their cell phones, and there is so much video that they captured of what happened. Let me give you a quick rundown of what took place. In Missouri, they all meet, over 1,000 people in a high school gymnasium to have this delegate meeting. The guy who's in charge of the meeting, his job is to nominate and take nominations on who will chair the meeting.
Okay.
Under Robert's Rules of Order. It's pretty simple stuff.
Sounds like it.
Well, what he does is instead of hearing from the crowd and taking nominations, he simply arbitrarily appoints someone. When he appoints this guy to become the chair of the meeting, you can hear people in the crowd beginning to yell and calling for a division and a point of order. Now, the way a division works in Robert's Rules of Order is when you say division, and anyone can call for it, you have to have all of the yeas stand and be counted, and then all of the nays stand and be counted, so you have a clear representation of who's saying what. You can't just call for a voice vote where everyone just yells yay or nay. They won't follow any of these rules. There's a guy who's videotaping. They refuse to move the meeting forward until he either turns his camera off, he refuses to do so, so they call the cops.
Wow.
20 cops show up. This guy's arrested and put in the back of a squad car. Other people are still recording, but they have their phones down, so it's just audio, and you can hear the audio. And they start nominating this guy named from the floor named Brent Strafford to get up and to be the chair. That you can hear the chairman saying, "I'm not going to entertain any points of order right now. I'm not going to entertain any nominations.
What?
I'm simply going to nominate." So he arbitrarily nominates.
Well, he nominates or he appoints?
Well, I'm sorry, excuse me. He appoints.
So there is no vote. It's like I am the leader. I am saying what it is. I'm done. This isn't a process. We're not going to follow Robert's Rules of Order on this?
At all. And then on top of that, you can hear, the majority of the crowd, there's these loud voices chanting this guy's name who they're trying to nominate. The guy who is nominated now, who is now appointed, should have been nominated. He's now been appointed arbitrarily to chair this meeting, gets up, and because there are so many people making noise, he moves to actually close the meeting and to adjourn. Does not get a two-thirds majority. Under Robert's rules, you need a two-thirds majority to adjourn a meeting, not just a motion and a second. You have to have a two-thirds majority.
Right.
You can hear people yelling when he calls for the,
point of order.
Point of order. No, it didn't remember the point of order, but he says, will the motion carry? And you can hear all these people yelling no. And he says, motion carries, you're out. So they leave. Now, here's the craziest part. So they go outside into the parking lot, And this guy who they were calling for, Brent Strafford, stands up in the parking lot and says, under the rules, because he's on the caucus rules committee, under the rules of the caucus, we are allowed to continue to carry on as long as we're in the same location as what was previously posted 15 days ago.
Right. The venue has. He said we're in the same venue. We can continue having the meeting because there was no proper ruling, 2/3 majority to adjourn the meeting.
Correct. And as long as they're in the same location, he said originally it was posted. It was not posted as the high school gymnasium. It was just posted as the high school.
Aha! So parking lot is a high school.
Parking lot, the high school. And the video, now there's lots of video of this because there's all these people with cell phones out. So there's video where he stands up on a chair in the parking lot, and there are hundreds of people outside around this chair. And he's explaining to people, it is so orderly. It is so calm. He's explaining to them, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take nominations. So they nominate him out there in the parking lot now to chair this meeting. He says, we're going to pass a petition around. We're going to list on there our delegates for nomination. Then we'll vote on them. He says, everyone's wearing a wristband. You need to write down the numbers on the wristband so that we follow the rules exactly. He says on video, you better hurry up and do this before the SWAT team gets here. Now, he was joking. But within 5 or 6 minutes, a group of cops come in. There's a helicopter overhead. They arrest him.
Oh, my Lord.
Take him out in handcuffs. Again, it's all on video. He's being taken away in handcuffs. I interviewed him yesterday via Skype. We're going to run the interview tonight.
Fantastic.
He says when he was taken to the police, because he was asking, what's the charge? They will tell you when you get there. Well, what am I being arrested for? We'll tell you when you get there.
Oh, my God.
To the police station, they gave him a citation for trespassing, for criminal trespass, because he wasn't supposed to be in the parking lot.
Oh, this is absolutely frightening.
It is. It absolutely is. When you have cops coming in, and I'm telling you, you'll see the video. There is nothing in this video where these people are being belligerent. They're not being violent. They're not being disorderly. And these aren't a bunch of teenagers and a bunch of young people either. These are middle-aged people. They're young people. They're older people who are there, and they're just
They're there participating in the democratic process, and they're being railroaded. Ben Swann, I guess for the cops to show up and arrest that guy, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of that scene in The Godfather when they're out protecting Don Corleone outside the hospital, and the cops show up and start, beating people up. What are you doing out here kind of thing? It makes you kind of wonder in whose pocket the cops are in this situation.
The situation there was ridiculous. We're also going to do on Wednesday night, same thing happening in Georgia. They're not following the rules. They had a nomination slate in Georgia for delegates, and rather than presenting the nomination slate, they just said, we're going to vote on it arbitrarily, yays and nays. You hear a few people say yay, and this is also on video, and you hear a bunch of people say nay, and they call for division, division, stand up and count them. And the chair says, we're not doing division, we're not doing point of orders, we're done. I'm approving this list as it is.
Wow.
And so that's all on video, too. And that happened in several places in Georgia. So.
Ben, we'll be certainly watching Fox 19 tonight to check this out and tomorrow. But real quick before you go, on which side is the faction that threw out Robert's rules and ultimately had the police come arrest somebody?
Well, and that is a question I don't know for sure, obviously, because it's somewhat speculative on my part. The folks who were there claim that it was Romney and Paul supporters who were disenfranchised, and that it was Santorum supporters who were pushing their slate through.
Well,
and so the parking lot was full of Romney and Paul supporters, and it was the Santorum people who did it in Missouri. They claim that it was Gingrich people who pulled that in Georgia in order to get those delegates.
I tell you what, Ben Swann, Fox 19, we're going to be watching this tonight, and I know you're going to find out and get to the bottom of this because somebody has to, and I'm glad you're around to do it. This is absolutely, we're beyond shenanigans without a doubt, Ben.
Yeah, definitely so.
We'll be watching tonight. I'll be talking to you again next Tuesday.